and emu fields. But it was based as a permanent nuclear testing ground, and it was pretty shocking. I mean, there were 7 nuclear bombs were blown up there. I mean, a couple of them in greater capacity than Hiroshima.
That's just mind-boggling to think that happened in Australia, isn't it? It's just mind-boggling.
And people have been dying ever since. And there are third generations children that are being born disfigured or stillborn from the daughters of the, you know, so it's gone through 3 generations.
The family genes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, there's some pretty, you know, hideous,
horrific things.
Yeah. And my book does only deal with the 2 years of those detonations, but it's yes, I'm rather pleased with that because. As I say, it is a work of fiction, and I don't pretend to be an historian. But I have been asked to speak about Maralinga. I mean, that the really hot area was recently just returned to the Indigenous people. It supposedly has been, you know, clear of irradiation, but of course it won't be, you know. So. I've been asked to speak on various radio programs, etc., and I've tried to take myself away from that. Look, get it right. I am a writer of fiction. I don't want to be treated as an historian that's a full boot, you know, book on this.
I think it's probably too that it's because, as you say, there was the Royal Commission, and there are no doubt, you know, historical books written about it. But often something like a work of fiction, it opens it up to a bigger audience, and it does give it a different voice. And that's probably why a lot of people have looked to you to say, well, this is a different voice and a different audience, but it's getting the message out again.
It is getting the message out, and it's opening people's eyes up to the fact that historically this did happen. But funnily enough, where, as a writer of fiction, I can go further than a writer of non-fiction, is that when you look at those reports from various people giving evidence at the Royal Commission, the reports absolutely contradict each other, because the whole of the base of Maralinga was run on a need-to-know basis. You know, you're doing one job there as an engineer, you're not allowed to know what that bloke over there is doing who is building the bombs, what that bloke over there is doing who is clearing the, you know, and what that bloke over there is doing with the irradiation detection unit. And normally when military men are out in a remote field, they're encouraged to bond. You know, look, come on, we're all buddies, we're brothers together. No. These men were not encouraged to speak outside their various areas of expertise. So nobody knew the full story. So that, I mean, there was a vet story that came out in the Royal Commission which was completely denied by all scientists, and they said, because, no, they're obviously being a Royal Commission, they are no longer bound by the oath of silence. I mean, if you break the oath of silence, the allegiance, you know, you can be...
You'd be in a lot of trouble.
Well, it's a treasonable offence. I mean, technically, you can be put before a firing squad. And there were Aboriginal bodies discovered, according to this vet, and there were a number of them there working with the radiation detection unit or whatever they were, and they discovered these bodies that had obviously walked through a very hot area, and they had died several days, and they were there is one story that came out of the report that they were threatened with to be charged with treason, which, as I say, can amount actually, technically, as I say, you could face a firing squad. You know, I mean, that technically, if you know. But anyway, they were held to their oath of silence, their allegiance, their sworn allegiance. If they not to open their mouths. Then there were other collections, people that said there was absolutely no Aboriginal deaths at all.
So you had
who do you believe? So as a writer of fiction, I'm sorry, in my book, yes, there are Aboriginal deaths.
So it does give you a bit of licence in a way, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yes. There's so many contradictory facts. I mean, there is the story of the Milputty family who actually did, and this is a traditional family, who walked through a very hot area and were discovered by the detection units, all done up in goon suits and gas masks and everything. Well, I mean, these are traditional people. They're barefooted, they're virtually naked. Our whole family,
so no
Milputty family. Oh no, none at all. And they are grabbed, put aboard trucks. They've never even seen a truck, let alone been on a truck. Their dogs are shot, and then they're taken to the cleansing unit. Everything. They are scrubbed and showered until their flesh is just raw. Things shoved up their noses, in their ears for hours, shoved in these calico garments, and then taken to a camp like 1,000 miles, 1,000 kilometres from actually where their home area is as a nomadic people. So, I mean, you know. And then, of course, there are all the stories of blindness and stillborn babies and all of this, you know.
So as I say, even though you know you're not of writing fact here, but it is still, as I say, opening it up to different audiences.
Yeah.
Now it's like we're going for a trip around Australia, really, isn't it? Because the next one we're going to is Tasmania, which of course is your newest book, Tiger Men. Now Tasmania is I love Tasmania. I think it's a lovely island. It just could be a little bit warmer, I think.
Yes, me too. I'll agree with you there.
Now, what was your inspiration for your first seed to write Tiger Men?
It's funny. It's such a silly, simple little one, actually. After telling a story like The Wardrobe, which is so poignant and so much depth to it, I feel a bit silly saying this. I was just doing a tourist thing. I was there down at, Sullivan's Cove, Constitution Dock, Salamanca Place, people who know Hobart, the glorious docklands of Hobart. And I've been to Hobart many, many times. My husband's Tasmania, specifically from Hobart. And we have family there, and I go down there a lot. But it was a number of years ago, and I was wandering around, and I looked at all these, they appeared to me to be new historical plaques put out there obviously by the City Council.
Yeah.
And maybe they had been there last time, and I just simply hadn't paid enough attention. But they did look very new, and so many of them were specifically about the ruthless merchants of Hunter Street, you know, these really big ruthless merchant people of all, and about, you know, Henry Jones and IXL and his jam factory, and William McGregor and his fleets of ships, and what's his name, de Greaves, whatever, and Cascade Brewery and all of this. And I suddenly thought, nobody has written about this absolute golden heyday, this golden era of Tasmania's history. The fiction that I've read, and but as many of us would have, has been the convict days, which again, fascinating. And you can't write a book setting it in the period as I have I've started out in the 1850s when Van Diemen's Land became Tasmania. And this started a whole new pride, and let's put the stain of the convict days behind us. And
we're moving on.
And start this whole pretentious new society too, you know, and tell lies and pretend we're not who we are, and all of that sort of thing. And to my mind, you can't write that without, of course, retrospectively touching on the convict days, because most of these people, most of these people
came from convict beginnings. Yes,
absolutely, or they still are. Convicts. I mean, you know.
Yeah, that
they're pretending they're not.
That's a good point. Yeah. 1850. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
1850.
Yeah. What I found hysterical is I mean, I have the comment actually from a lovely woman who's a housekeeper in one of the welfare houses where I am in about I think up there I'm about 1860 maybe later 1850s, and there's this frightfully snobby, the Littletons, they're called Littletons, Nigel and Phyllis Littleton, and they're sort of, you know, a Tasmanian royalty, you know. And Clara, who has been a ticket of leaver, you know, she's served her time, and I mean she probably came out for the usual, you know, the stealing the pork pie, the whatever that we all read about. In other words, not a criminal type at all, but they just didn't have the room there, and America had its independence, so they can't dump them in America, so they dump them out here, and they need to, you know, populate and you know, and all of that anyway. So I mean, Clara's a good woman. And she's looking at this insufferable snob who's behaving like, you know, she's the Queen of Tasmania.
Lord of the Manor, Lady of the Manor.
Yes, and Clara's quite rightfully thinking, you know, you're not blue blood. There's no such thing as aristocracy out here. Who are you pretending to be?
Yes.
Don't kid yourself. Because, I mean, the people who came out as free settlers and became extraordinarily wealthy and very powerful on a global basis.
They were usually the poor relatives, weren't they, of the aristocracy?
No, they were hard-working, enterprising people, many free settlers. But they came out here and they wanted to get rich. They were greedy. They plundered the place. They killed off all the seals. They killed off all the whales. They, you know...
Wealth at any cost.
Oh, yes, and they became very rich. But they certainly weren't the blue bloods of society.
Yes.
But then they immediately got rich and they pretended they were. I don't know, it's rather fun. Do you agree with that or not?
I live there.
I gathered that. I could tell by your reactions that there was a certain knowledge
I'm
here.
going to Tasmania too.
Aren't we lucky? You know what my husband always says? He throws up a high five and he says, "Give me 6."
Yep.
I like that one.
Got the scar.
Yeah, but I like the "give me 6" better. Yeah.
Now, it's actually the story of 2 families, a wealthy English and a
It's
family.
3 families.
Oh, sorry, 3 families. Now, you had the Irish and the English. Now, that's very much traditional with Australia, isn't it? Especially in the early days, Irish-English. Now, did you go, is that why you did it? Because of the way it was generally the rich English person in the story and the poor Irishman? Is that what you know?
There are 3 families in this, and the other one is an American.
Yeah, I saw that. Throw that into the mix a little bit, because that isn't so much in an Australian story set in that era, is it?
Ah, that's very interestingly it is, though. Very interestingly
really?
it is. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, see, these 3, I was talking to some radio, gorgeous interviewer, and he said, "Oh, it sounds like a bit of a joke, the back cover of your book. You know, you've got an Englishman and an Irishman, an American walk into a bar, you know." Well, they don't. But there is an Englishman.
They walk into a tavern back then.
Yeah, well, and a lot of other places too. I got brothels and everything featured in. But no, Silas Stanford, who is the very proper Englishman, and he is of a type that did abound, that came out in the early days of the free settlers, and he is a good man. He's a philanthropist. He's a very devout, church-going man. He's probably a bit pompous and probably a bit, but he wants to do good for his fellow man. He wants to, he and many of his ilk, they start the churches, they start the schools for the orphans. They are genuine philanthropists. That's the backbone of the new nation. And then there's the Mick O'Callaghan, the Irishman, who actually is on the run. You've got to read the book to find out what he's on the run from. That doesn't happen until later.
Irishmen are always on the run.
They've got a lot to run from. Many of them have a lot to run from. But he thinks, and quite rightfully so, how lucky he is to be arriving there as a free man, even though he's on the run, because he's a wicked boy and he should really, by rights, have been arriving there in chains. And then the 3rd character, Jefferson Brinsley Powell, is an American. Now, in the early 1940s, there was about 100 Canadians with a number also of French Canadians with a number also of American sympathisers were sent out to Tasmania. What had happened, America, of course, had long since had got its liberation from Britain, but the Canadians wanted to be liberated. They wanted, and so there were rebel pockets of Canadians, rebelling against their rule, and there were American sympathisers who crossed the border to help them in their fight.
Oh, really?
For liberation. And they were caught, they were rounded up, and they were sent to Tasmania by guess who? None other than George Arthur. Now, George Arthur was the first governor of Van Diemen's Land, after whom Port Arthur is named, of course, and a ghastly man. And after serving his time in Tasmania as governor of Van Diemen's Land, then, of course, he was sent up as lieutenant governor of Upper Canada.
Okay.
So it was George Arthur who said, we'll send them back to my old stamping ground, And I find that hysterically, do you know that one, don't you?
No, I didn't know that one.
It's amazing to see. A lot of Tasmanians don't even know that. There would actually be ancestors of the, in my book there is.
You're a bit of a historian,
That might be fanciful, because with political prisoners, of course they were sent as political prisoners.
Yes.
So they have to serve their time. They can work it as a ticket of leave after serving a year or so, but they have to serve that time there. After that time, they are free to go back to their own country.
Okay.
So they probably
would have
did,
gone back.
but in my book, no. Well, he stayed. But whereas the English prisoners, the British prisoners, they have to stay. They don't.
Have no choice.
They have to. No, they're not allowed to go home.
Yes.
But they needed them to populate the island.
So you started in 1850. Where does this story go to?
End of World War One.
Okay. Okay. Now the name Tiger Men. Tell us, because I read where that comes from, but tell the audience where that comes from, the name Tiger Men.
God, you must be getting a bit bored with the sound of my voice by now.
No, I don't think so at all.
That is an interesting one. I actually had to fight a little bit for the name Tiger Men. I think because we didn't want to alienate, you know, female readers, and they think it's a book all about men. Believe you me, there are tiger women in it. And during that period and in that place, of course, women had to be just as tough, as resilient, if not more so.
Yes, pioneer women.
Than men, absolutely, yeah. And the women are very, very strong characters. But the tiger men of the title, it's got a double-barreled meaning to it. It does refer to those barons of industry. It refers to those ruthless people who literally pillaged the island for whatever would bring them wealth, and it's a very wealthy island. So it refers to, you know, when you refer to a tiger economy, those tiger men are those barons of industry. But it also refers to the men who were actually really coined tiger men, and those were men who were employed as bounty hunters to hunt the thylacine, the Tasmanian tiger.
Yes.
And
to extinction.
Yes. And funnily enough, first of all, in the very early days, they were employed by the Van Diemen's Land Company to hunt the tigers, because when the Van Diemen's Land Company were a very, very wealthy bunch back in London, investors and everything, and they'd sent all these farmers and everything out, and they would reap the investment of this new farming society, etc. Well, I think maybe they thought, erroneously thought, that these farmers were going to be able to farm beautiful, you know, fields like they were already. Well, of course they didn't. It's a pretty wild land, and so the farmers were not yielding profit for quite some time. It's a very rich land, but they had to clear it.
Takes time, yeah.
Exactly. So that everybody's going, oh crikey, we're in trouble. What do we do? I know. We'll blame those wretched wolves. They were calling them wolves. They're not any. You know, they're a marsupial. But that we'll blame these terrible marauding wolves that come down from the hills and kill thousands of sheep, which is absolutely not true.
Yes.
Any damage that was done to sheep was invariably feral dogs. There were heaps of feral dogs. So this went on, and eventually it even got to the point later on, the Tasmanian government brought in a bounty on tigers, which is terrible. So actually I have throughout the book, I have these little vignettes. They're only a couple of pages apiece, and they actually do follow the demise of the Tassie tiger. And you can...
It's like a string through the book.
Yeah, and you can wonder, it's a bit mysterious for a reader maybe, thinking, oh, why? It's interesting. It's only a couple of pages, so it won't bore you. And I don't do it right at the cliffhangery part where you're going to go, oh, bugger, I've got to read this. You know. It's there, but they're there really for a purpose, because I want the tiger to sort of mirror, really, the pillage and plunder that was visited upon Tasmania. So that the tiger sort of symbolises this.
That's a very interesting way to look at it. Very interesting. Well, we're going to have a few questions from the audience. If anyone would like to ask Judy a question, do you mind?
No, not at all. It's just like Jude was beneath the Southern Cross. And I said, oh, why is that, Rob? And he said, well, people kept dying all the time. And I said, Robert, it goes for 230 years, over 7 generations, people are going to die. And, of course, it's got this whopping great family tree, and I get a lot of reaction emails coming in on my website from women saying, my favourite book of yours is Beneath the Southern Cross. And the reason being, I think, that women love dynastic books, and they love family trees. Yes. And if you look around at anybody who's having a family tree done within their family, you will invariably find it'll be the woman. Yeah.
Now, do you think that you'll go back to acting at all full time at any stage?
Look at me, I never stop. No, really, I couldn't bear to turn a television set on and see that tired old face anymore. No,
or the stage, go back to the
on a stage is too much hard work.
Yes.
I've been very lucky in the way that my life has orchestrated itself, that I worked in the theatre playing the most fabulous roles. I mean, beautiful, leading, wonderful roles in brilliant plays. When I was
London,
young, and all through England with British Rep System out here, for the Old Tote Theatre Company at the Sydney Opera House, for the Melbourne Theatre Company, for the Perth Theatre Company. I've worked here at the Adelaide Festival Centre many years ago. But I did that when I was young and fit enough to really enjoy it.
It really does take a lot out of you to work.
Oh yeah, and particularly during the rep season when I'm doing what we call back to back. You're rehearsing one show at night and you're doing the other show. You're rehearsing one show in the day and doing another show at night. And I'm talking about Shakespeare and Shaw and Chekhov. I'm not talking about old pot boilers. And it's so exciting. But I did that when I was young. And then I had, all the fame and the glitter and the stuff of telly, and had good fun working with lovely people and lovely crews. And now I have all the excitement of creating my books and getting a readership. I mean, I just think I'm so fortunate that things have gone in the order in which they have. The only thing in response to your question that I'm no good at doing, I'm no good at saying, no, I'm not an actor anymore. Because I've been an actor for 40 years.
And
I can't somehow say, no,
yeah.
but I wouldn't really care whether I did or not, because the books are the most important thing to me.
Yes. Now, just one last question. When you do write a book, do you become the character as you would if you were an actor, or are you seeing it like a picture unfolding, as in a film unfolding?
Gosh, I've written so many absolutely ghastly characters. How awful if I had to become them. I mean, what if I had to become Reginald in Tiger Men? Oh,
you were Vicky on the box.
Oh, yes, that's true. Oh, yeah, but she was way before your time. You
oh, no, but I did do research.
Good girl. Yes, you obviously did. You're very good. No, I don't become them. A gorgeous girlfriend of mine, Susie, you met, came to the launch, Susie. And Susie is a manipulative, devious, typically female. You know, I'm no good at that. I'm sort of what you see is what you get. I'm not good at manipulating people. I'm not good at any of that. And Susie said, oh, darling, she said, all of those strong, honourable women in your books, they're all you. She said, all of those absolute conniving bitches, they're all me. and I hate, but look, the women in my books are strong, honourable, certainly not me. I've got all the weak foibles that everybody has, of course, but I identify with the men as much as I do with the women.
Yes.
When they hit, you know, huge decisions in life to make or something, I live through those human emotions with all of the characters, be they male or female.
Yes.
But no, never is any one character ever me.
Yes. And when you finish a book, does it feel good, or do you feel sad sometimes if those characters are finished now, so to speak?
You feel very, very empty.
Yes, yes.
You feel, phew, I did it, I got it done, you know, because it's a long and lonely road, and but it's very exciting when you're travelling it, and when you finish it, it's 2 years of your life, and I'm just, my husband just says, oh, for God's sake, will you start another book? Because he said, oh, that's a one of Bruce's I love. He said, God, Judy said, you'd worry sheep. Isn't that great? All I can see is that flock of sheep down that end. Terrible worry up here. So yeah, I don't know what to do with myself when I finish a book.
Oh, fantastic. Well, your current book is Tiger Men, and I'm sure there'll be another book coming along in 2 years from now, and we'll look forward to that. But for today, we're going to be talking about Tiger Men as we had. Judy's going to be here to sign a few books for people if they'd like that. And I'd like to very much thank you for coming along, and we look forward to future books and your wonderful collection. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you, Denise. It's been wonderful. It's been great.